All right, so I have struggled with my mental health for quite some time, and I have anxiety, mild depression, and I believe my PTSD is like at 50 something, 57%. Last time I took a test with a psychologist, my PTSD was pretty high. It is pretty high. So I definitely need therapy. I've been in therapy on and off. I am really big on um, herbs. I like the ashwagandha root, chamomile, lavender, any anxiety medication that isn't going to be too harmful. I'm more into like microdosing with the LSD or microdosing on other substances. And when I say I'm big on it, I mean I support more of a holistic treatment towards PTSD and anxiety. But I still have taken anxiety medication and I am not against taking anxiety medication. I don't have a personality disorder. I have had a counselor, licensed therapist tell me that I may be bipolar. I don't believe that I have bipolar disorder. I go into the same patterns. When I'm triggered by something, I go into the same patterns. It's not manic and depressive and manic and depressive. It's just the same anxiety, like PTSD. So if you have PTSD or you have anxiety and it's really bad, what happens is you go into I just like people won't hear from me. My curtains get closed. Like if I get triggered, I start going around and around thinking about scenarios that can go like and how it can go wrong and how I have to correct it. I start preparing for the worst when the worst doesn't happen. It's not even near happening. It may not even happen, but I just am prepared for it. And I drive people mad. So I'm all for taking anxiety medicine, and I'm even more for a holistic approach to struggling with any type of mental health. If you can, I've done a lot of research, and there's more research that needs to be done. But today we're talking about narcissistic abuse and broken like homes. So I come from a broken home and I have a parent that I suspect or I believe has NPD. And that parent is, I don't think people with NPD are evil. I mean, my dad has some issues with PTSD because he's a veteran, he's a Marine. And if any of you guys have a parent that's a Marine, you understand just of like everything that I have to deal with. We've dealt with substance abuse, suicide ideation, suicide emergencies, PTSD episodes, um, domestic violence, and stonewalling, lack of acknowledgement of our emotions and our existence, competing to get attention from the parent that has NPD. All of that is what I grew up with and had to deal with. Did my dad put his hands on me? No. Did he put his hands on my mom? Yeah. Did he put his hands on other people like he was in relationships with or his current wife? From what I gather, yes, but that's their testimony. So like if they want to talk about that, then they will. I'm just saying I have to acknowledge what I saw. I would be doing myself, my spirit, and my kids injustice if I'd say to myself, hey, the things that I saw that were horrendous didn't happen. And I would just be contributing to the continuation of gaslighting. I'm not the best mother. I yell at my kid sometimes and I shouldn't. And I'm not the best parent, but I definitely let her know, hey, what I did and how I reacted was bad. You don't deserve that. I don't want her thinking that is okay. I'm human. And the one thing about being a mom is that we are looked at like we can't make mistakes. That's just bullshit. But yeah, so I grew up in a really difficult environment in that in that type of community, and that there's a lot of people on this platform that that are like myself. And I think one of my um, latest memories that was really traumatic is just being in a car and he's having a PTSD episode, and there's this, there's a emergency with suicide. I don't want to go into so much detail about it, but if someone is threatening their life and that's somebody that you love and you don't want them to hurt themselves, and they have artillery, it's not like it's just, oh, this is what I'm saying, but there's actually, like, this person has artillery in there. They're threatening, that's scary as shit. Like, that's especially when you're a teen or if you're a kid. So for me, there's a lot of trauma that I have. And when you deal with a parent that has NPD, it's not like, hey, I'm sorry. People with NPD don't sit down and say, that should never happen. I apologize. People with NPD is like, they just stonewall and don't acknowledge it, and the unit around them that give them their supply will just gaslight the situation. I hope today, I believe today, that my parent is getting all the support and help that he needs, because veterans definitely need support and help. The problem is when you're dealing with someone like that who also has NPD, who also feels this that their image has to be a certain way, and that they are nothing that they do is wrong. That's problematic, and so, like, I grew up with that. Like, you don't talk about these things, and there's nothing wrong with what you're going through, and it's, this is just what we have to deal with in our community, and we deal with it and we just move on. And no, like, that's not fucking healthy for kids. Rather than telling kids to deal with stuff, and that's just what we do, and just be quiet and mind your business about what you had to endure, we ought to explain that, hey, I'm struggling, I have to get help, I promise you I will. You do not deserve this. This is not something that kids should have to witness or go through. And so, like, for the parent that I had that doesn't have NPD, it was explained that way, which helped me. But I needed that from both my parents, and I really didn't get that. I got from my dad's new family unit. He remarried after him and my mom divorced. So as I stated before, I went through a broken home. But I got a lot of, you don't say anything about this. This is what we deal with. And nothing wrong with your dad. Like, that's what I had to deal with. I don't have selective hearing. That's just what I had to deal with. That's how I was spoken to. It's not good. It's not healthy. And I hope that today people in his family and around him have taken a different approach. I don't know for sure because there's distance. I have had to create some form of distance. I barely speak to my dad's side of the family, not because I don't love them, but because there's a lot of dark things that come up when I speak with them and to them, and I don't, it puts me in a bad state. So I do create, there's a lot of distance with my dad and my dad's family. And we talk, we never really talk. And I don't really know, I don't, like, if I ever had to have a real sit down talk with my father in my personal life, we would need a therapist there. Like, there's just no way that we're talking, because there's too much trauma that I have. There are things that are going to be said that can possibly be said that will negatively impact me so much that it could actually affect my mental health. So I need a therapist present, just so that when he goes into his thing, there are things that I can get, that we can all have a better, clearer, understanding. Because sometimes when I try to explain things, it's misconstrued, and it just gets tiring and exhausting. In the meantime, if that ever happens, fan fucking tastic. But if it doesn't happen, I'm strong enough in my own life and I'm grown enough to just live. But I just want to spread as much awareness as possible. I've been through a lot of trauma. Having someone that you love that calls them, calls himself your dad, that is your dad, and they stonewall you and they're not emotionally available for whatever reason, or they're threatening to end their life and they have artillery. These fucking things is scary as hell. It causes trauma, and the trauma will remain with you for a very long time, and so like it's important to acknowledge that these things happen, find support groups for the people you love in your family. But if it's coupled with NPD, you gotta tackle it a certain way. And the first thing you want to do is talk about the reality of the situation and what's happening, because there's oftentimes a lot of gaslighting that happens, and people just brush stuff under the rug to adhere to a particular image. That's what happens when people have NPD. When, on top of having PTSD, on top of being a part of the veteran community. So there it's just like a whole nother level of healing and like just combating and fighting the problems, And so for me, um, I'm spreading awareness because we need to. It's how we get these people to go to therapy and trust and believe they're not going to take accountability. They're just going to go to therapy and be like, I'm here because y'all made me come here, not because I need it. Like that's narcissistic people there. No accountability. I don't need to be here. I survived more than what you could ever imagine. Yeah, like these things are true, but it's this is exactly why therapy is vital, because some things people should not have to go through, and if they do have to go through it, then they need to get extra care. It's like me breaking my leg and someone say, no, bro, your bones will get back together eventually. You don't need a cast. So I mean, I hate to be like, I'm not trying to be offensive, and I'm really not trying to make light of the situation, but in order for me to deal with my own stuff, I sometimes have to use my sense of humor. And I mean, it's just how I deal with my own stuff. It's just part of my personality. So I don't mean to come off as offensive. If I am, I do apologize. I'm a very quirky person, and I'm pretty sure I'm on a spectrum, but nobody's going to measure that, because people, when it comes to that, there's a lot of prejudices. I have been misdiagnosed multiple times because people just want to group me in with every other black person, every other black woman. Like, psychology can be quite racist. Okay, this is partly why I don't really like dealing with it too much. But there's some really good aspects to counseling, holistic therapy, and spiritual therapy, and I'm all for it. But psychology and psychiatry, sometimes I feel like it's in the fucking stone ages. Sometimes I feel like it's just, it can be very racist. Okay, you may be diagnosed with something entirely different just because of where you live and your demographic. And if we don't go into that and acknowledge that, we're going to continue to struggle as we've been for the past 100 years. So, yeah. So, anyway, there are a lot of people like myself who are talking about their experiences. One of the things that I plan to do, I plan to partner with YouTube and build like a platform. But one of the things I really plan to do is to create a small communities in which people start to identify certain patterns in our culture. There are certain personality types and, and temperaments that are more likely to take on particular jobs that will only make it more difficult for them to, it makes it easier for them to fall into like having NPD, being narcissistic, but it also makes it harder for them to get help with what they need. And we can identify those things early on. We can kind of push younger people who probably are reacting particular ways or going into certain directions because of trauma. We can push them and guide them in a proper direction. A young man with a certain personality type who grows up in a household where his dad is beating up on his mother, he wants to be a police officer, because he wants to protect his mom. It's a great thing, but that may not be the best thing for someone who has that type of trauma. And he could actually turn out to be just like his father or not, but oftentimes it happens. And so if we see people who come from these places and these spaces, young people, and we understand their personality and their types, and we look at it a little bit more intently, we guide them. These are things that I want to do with my platform. I want to write my books and, share that. So if you like where I'm going with this, you can obviously subscribe. If you're just trying to figure out if I'm on the spectrum, well, you could also be a part of the group because I'm trying to figure that out as well. So it'd be a great revelation for us all. And before you decide to slay me in the comments, let me just say this. I have gone to a great many people. I've gone to at least 4 psychiatrists. And I'm like, I think I'm on the spectrum. And I get immediately, you're not. But I have gone to therapists and I have been in communities with other people who've been diagnosed with autism, Asperger's, and schizoaffective disorder, and other personality disorders that people of my demographic may not fall under. But for some reason, they're like, I think you have this. So it is something to look at. We'll talk about how people of color are misdiagnosed and just what we're struggling with is overlooked. And yeah, so anyway, comment below how you feel, and I may make a part 2 to this.